I thought my granddaughter couldn't understand a single word anyone said. That's what they told me. That's what the specialists wrote in their reports. That's what my son and his wife repeated every time I asked why Emma never responded when I spoke to her. For 5 years, I believed them. I believed all of it. And I almost lost everything because of that belief. My name is William Harris. I'm 68 years old. And I spent 41 years as a carpenter in Portland, Oregon, building houses for other people's families while trying to hold my own together. I retired 3 years ago after my knees finally gave out. My wife, Margaret, passed away 6 years ago from a brain aneurysm. One morning she was making pancakes, and by noon she was gone. Just like that. No warning, no goodbye. The doctor said it was quick, painless. I don't know if that's supposed to make it easier. It doesn't. After Margaret died, my son Kevin and his wife Danielle became the center of my world. They lived about 40 minutes south in Salem with Emma, who was 4 at the time. Emma had been diagnosed with severe developmental delay at age 2. She didn't speak, didn't respond to her name consistently, and seemed to exist in her own world. The pediatric neurologist used words like profound cognitive impairment and limited receptive language. Danielle explained it to me simply. She doesn't understand what we're saying, Dad. She can hear, but the words don't register. It's like speaking English to someone who only knows a language that doesn't exist. I accepted it because I had no reason not to. I'm a carpenter, not a doctor. What do I know about brain development? So, when I talked to Emma during visits, and she stared past me with those wide gray eyes, I figured that was just how it was. I'd hold her hand, bring her stuffed animals, sit with her while she drew in her sketchbooks. She drew constantly. Circles, lines, shapes that didn't seem to mean anything. Danielle said it was a self-soothing behavior, like rocking or hand flapping, just her brain doing what it needed to do. I should have looked closer at those drawings. I should have looked closer at a lot of things. This past September, Kevin called me on a Friday afternoon. He sounded rushed, almost panicked. Dad, I need a huge favor. Danielle's brother was in a car accident in Tucson. It's bad. She needs to fly out tonight, and I've got that conference in Chicago I can't cancel. The partners are counting on me. Kevin worked as a junior associate at a real estate development firm. He'd been chasing a promotion for 2 years, and this conference was apparently his shot. We need someone to watch Emma. Her aide canceled last minute, and the backup facility can't take her until Monday. Can she stay with you? Just for the weekend? Of course, I said. Bring her over whenever you're ready. Dad, you know she's a lot of work. She needs her routine. Meals at specific times, her weighted vest, her sound machine at night. I'll write everything down. Kevin, she's my granddaughter. We'll figure it out. He arrived an hour later with Emma in the back seat of his BMW, clutching a raggedy stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was a baby. She didn't look at me when I opened the car door. She just climbed out and stood on the sidewalk, holding that rabbit against her chest. Kevin hauled in 2 bags of supplies. Her medications, a specific brand of oatmeal she'd eat for breakfast, the sound machine, her drawing supplies, a laminated schedule of her daily routine broken into 15-minute increments. The kid's life was more regimented than a military operation. Danielle called from the airport while Kevin was setting things up in my spare room. Remember, she said, her voice tight and controlled, don't try to talk to her like she understands. It confuses her, and she gets agitated. Just follow the schedule, and she'll be fine. And make sure she takes her evening medication. It's the pink liquid in the blue bottle. It helps her sleep. I wrote it all down. They left. And then it was just Emma and me in my little craftsman house on Hawthorne Street, the rain tapping against the windows the way it always does in Portland in September. The first evening was quiet. I followed the schedule precisely. Dinner at 5:30, exactly as written. Chicken nuggets, apple slices, 3 baby carrots. She ate methodically, in the same order every time. Carrots first, then apple, then nuggets. No variation. After dinner, I set her up in the living room with her drawing supplies while I cleaned up. She sat cross-legged on the floor and began drawing. I glanced over a few times. More circles and lines. But something caught my eye. One of the shapes looked like a house. Not an abstract shape, but an actual house with a triangle roof, a door, and windows. I walked over and knelt down beside her. That's a nice house, Emma, I said, forgetting Danielle's instructions about not talking to her like she understood. Emma didn't look up, but her hand paused for just a moment, a fraction of a second. Then she kept drawing. I went back to the kitchen and thought about that pause. At 8 o'clock, I gave Emma her pink medication. She opened her mouth for it automatically, like a baby bird. She was asleep within 20 minutes. I carried her to the guest room, tucked her in with the sound machine, humming white noise, and closed the door. Saturday morning, I woke up early and found Emma already awake, sitting on the guest room floor, drawing. She'd used up an entire sketchbook overnight. I flipped through the pages while she ate her oatmeal. More shapes. But the more I looked, the more I saw. There were houses again. There were figures. Stick people, crude but recognizable. 2 tall ones and 1 small one. And in several drawings, the small figure was inside what looked like a box or a cage, while the tall figures stood outside. My chest tightened, but I told myself I was reading into it. She doesn't understand what she's drawing. That's what they said. It's just patterns. We spent Saturday together. I took her for a walk around the neighborhood. She held my hand without being prompted, which surprised me. She'd never done that before during visits. Usually Kevin or Danielle had to guide her physically, but she reached up and grabbed my hand as we stepped off the porch, and she held it the entire walk. At the park, she sat on a bench and drew while I watched the ducks in the pond. When I looked over, she'd drawn something different. A round shape with 2 dots and a curved line. A face. A smiling face. She tore the page out and held it toward me without looking up. I took it. Is this for me? No response. But she drew another one immediately. This time, 2 figures holding hands. One tall with gray on top of its head. One small with long lines coming from its head. Hair. She'd drawn us. Something was wrong with everything I'd been told about this child. That evening, after I gave her the pink medication and put her to bed, I sat in my living room staring at those drawings spread across the coffee table. Houses, figures, a smiling face. A child who supposedly couldn't understand language had drawn a picture of herself holding hands with her grandfather. That wasn't random pattern making. That was communication. I barely slept that night. Thoughts kept circling. Questions I'd never thought to ask. Why did Danielle always insist I not talk to Emma like she understood? Why was every visit so controlled, so scripted? Why had I never been alone with Emma until now? Sunday morning changed everything. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard something from the guest room. Not the sound machine. Something else. I walked to the door and listened. Humming. Emma was humming. A melody. Not random noise. It sounded like, "You Are My Sunshine." Margaret used to sing that. I'd sung it to Kevin when he was little, and I'd sung it to Emma a few times when she was a baby, before the diagnosis. I pushed the door open slowly. Emma was sitting on the bed, the rabbit in her lap, humming clearly and deliberately. She saw me and stopped. Her eyes went wide. Not the vacant stare I was used to. This was fear. Sharp, aware, unmistakable fear. "Emma," I said gently, "were you singing?" She shook her head rapidly. Then she pulled the rabbit up to her face and hid behind it. I sat on the edge of the bed, keeping distance between us. "It's okay. You're not in trouble." I liked it. Grandma used to sing that song. She didn't move. But, from behind the rabbit, in a voice so small I almost missed it, she said one word. "No." I froze. "What did you say?" She lowered the rabbit an inch. Her gray eyes were wet. "I know." Grandma sang it. I remember. The room felt like it dropped away beneath me. I was hearing my granddaughter speak for the first time in 5 years, and she wasn't babbling or making sounds. She was speaking in a full sentence. She remembered her grandmother. "Emma, you can talk?" She nodded, then immediately shook her head, then nodded again. Her face crumbled. "Don't tell Mommy, please." She said if anyone finds out I can talk, she'll put me in the hospital where they lock kids up. She said I'd never come home again. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not draw air into my lungs for several seconds. When I finally did, my voice came out broken. "Nobody is putting you anywhere. I promise you that. Can you tell me more?" And she did. Once she started, it was like watching ice crack on a frozen river. Everything came pouring through. She told me she'd always been able to understand and speak. When she was 2, Danielle had taken her to the doctor, claiming she wasn't developing normally. Emma didn't understand why at the time, just that Mommy wanted her to be quiet and not answer the doctor's questions. Danielle coached her before every appointment. "Don't talk. Don't look at them when they say your name. Just sit still and draw. If you're a good girl and stay quiet, we'll get ice cream." By the time Emma was 3, the coaching had turned into threats. If you talk, they'll take you away from me. They'll put you in a place with bad kids where nobody loves you. You'll never see daddy or grandpa again. A 3-year-old believed it completely. So Emma performed. She performed disability for 5 years, fooling doctors, therapists, school evaluators, and her own grandfather. She learned to mimic the behaviors Danielle described as part of her condition. The vacant stare, the lack of response, the repetitive drawing. She taught herself to read by watching TV with closed captions when her parents thought she was just staring at the screen. She listened to every conversation in the house. She understood everything. And what she understood was terrible. "Grandpa," she said, sitting on that guest room bed with tears running down her face. "They're stealing your money." "What do you mean?" "Daddy goes to your mailbox. He takes letters. Mommy has papers with your name on them. I've seen them at the kitchen table. They sign your name on things. Daddy laughs about it. He says you'd never notice because you're old and you don't check." My blood went cold. What kind of papers?" She shook her head. "I don't know what they're called. But one time Mommy said they got another card approved, and Daddy said the equity line went through. He said they could pull 200,000. He said by the time you figured it out, they'd be long gone." I gripped the bed frame. That couldn't be right. I would have noticed. I checked my mail. I managed my finances. But even as I thought it, doubt crept in. Kevin had helped me set up online banking 2 years ago after Margaret died. He'd insisted, "You shouldn't have to go to the bank in person, Dad. Let me help." He'd set up the accounts, chosen the passwords, linked everything. He'd told me he was simplifying things, and I'd let him. Because he was my son. Because I trusted him completely. Emma wasn't done. "There's something else. Mommy has a boyfriend. His name is Trent. He comes to the house when Daddy's at work. Sometimes Mommy talks to him about moving away. She says once they get enough of your money, they'll leave Portland. She says they'll go to Nevada or Arizona. She says they'll start over with new names. A boyfriend. Identity fraud. Stealing from my equity and credit. Planning to disappear. And all of it discussed freely in front of a child they believed couldn't understand a word. Emma, why are you telling me now? Why not before? Because I heard Mommy on the phone with Trent on Thursday night. She said they're almost done. She said after this weekend, they're going to do something to make sure you can't fight it. She said Daddy's going to get you to sign papers that give him control of everything, something called power of attorney. She said Daddy would tell you it's just in case something happens to you, that it's normal for families. But Trent said once you sign it, they own you. Power of attorney. Kevin was planning to come back from Chicago and convince me to sign over control of my finances, my property, my entire life. And I probably would have done it. Because he's my son, because he'd say it was for my own good. Because I'm 68 with bad knees and no wife, and what do I know about legal documents? "I know things because I listen," Emma said, as if reading my thoughts. "Nobody thinks I can hear them. So they say everything in front of me. I know Mommy's social security number. I know the code to Daddy's phone. I know where they hide the papers they don't want you to see. They're in a box in the garage behind the Christmas decorations." This 9-year-old child had been silently cataloging her parents' crimes for years, storing information with the precision of a detective, because she had no safe way to share it. I made a decision. I'm going to call somebody who can help us. The police. Do you know what the police do? She gave me a look that nearly broke my heart. "Grandpa, I know what police do. I know what a lot of things are. I'm not what they say I am." I called the Portland Police non-emergency line first. Then, based on their guidance, I called the Financial Crimes Division. I described what Emma had told me. The officer on the phone was skeptical at first. A child who'd been diagnosed as nonverbal was suddenly providing detailed accounts of financial fraud, but when I mentioned the specifics, the credit cards, the equity line, the power of attorney plan, his tone changed. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to send a detective to speak with you and your granddaughter today if possible." Detective Sarah Okafor arrived at my house 2 hours later. She was calm, professional, and surprisingly gentle with Emma. She didn't talk down to her. She sat on the floor with her and asked questions like she was talking to any other witness. Emma answered every one. She described conversations, dates, amounts, names. She described Trent, a man named Trent Holloway, who she said drove a black truck and had a tattoo of a scorpion on his forearm. She described the box in the garage where the documents were kept. She described how Danielle would practice forging my signature at the kitchen table, using a check I'd written to Kevin as a reference. Detective Okafor looked at me with an expression I'll never forget, part sympathy, part professional alarm. "Mr. Harris, I need you to check your financial accounts right now. All of them. Can you do that?" I couldn't. Kevin had set up my online banking, and I realized in that moment that I didn't actually know the password. He'd told me once, but I'd never written it down. I always just called Kevin when I needed something. That alone told Detective Okafor everything she needed to know. She made calls. Within hours, a forensic accountant was reviewing my financial records through the bank directly, bypassing the online system Kevin had set up. What they found made me sit down and not get up for a long time. 3 credit cards had been opened in my name over the past 18 months. Total balance, $87,000. A home equity line of credit had been opened on my house 9 months ago. They'd drawn $162,000 from it. My savings account, which should have held my retirement funds and Margaret's life insurance payout, had been drained through a series of transfers to accounts I'd never opened. Nearly $300,000 was gone. In total, Kevin and Danielle had stolen over $500,000 from me. My house, which I'd paid off 15 years ago, now had a lien on it. If the equity line went into default, I could lose it. I sat in my living room that night after Emma was asleep and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears rolling down my face while the rain hammered against the windows. My son had robbed me. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd helped build his first bookshelf, the man I'd loaned money to when his business was struggling. He'd systematically looted my life savings, my wife's legacy, my home, and he'd done it all while bringing me chicken nuggets for my granddaughter and telling me to take it easy. "Dad, you've earned it." The next morning, Detective Okafor returned with a warrant. She'd also contacted Child Protective Services. 2 things happened simultaneously. The police went to Kevin and Danielle's house in Salem with a search warrant, and a family court judge issued an emergency order placing Emma in my temporary custody. They found the box in the garage right where Emma said it would be, behind the Christmas decorations, in a plastic bin labeled "Old Tax Returns." Inside were forged documents, stolen mail, my social security card which Kevin had taken from my filing cabinet during a visit, blank checks from my checkbook, and a notebook in Danielle's handwriting with my signature practiced over and over. There were also printouts from the bank showing the equity line transfers and credit card statements they'd been intercepting from my mail. Kevin was arrested at the Portland airport. He'd flown back from Chicago a day early, which Detective Okafor found suspicious in itself. Danielle was arrested at a hotel in Tucson. Her brother hadn't been in a car accident. He was fine. She'd fabricated the entire emergency just like she'd fabricated Emma's disability to create a window where they could move forward with their plan. And Trent Holloway was picked up at a bar in Gresham. He turned out to have 2 prior fraud convictions. He'd been the architect of the financial scheme, the one who taught Danielle how to open accounts in my name, how to forge documents, how to drain equity without triggering immediate red flags. Kevin broke first. He always was the weaker one. In the interrogation room, he confessed to everything. He said it started small. A credit card here, a small transfer there. Danielle had introduced him to Trent, who she'd been seeing for over a year. Trent convinced them that my assets were sitting there doing nothing, that an old man living alone didn't need $500,000, that they could take it gradually and I'd never know. Kevin cried during his confession. He said he was sorry. He said he never wanted to hurt me. He said Danielle and Trent pushed him into it. He said the guilt ate at him every day. But he never once mentioned Emma. He never once expressed remorse for what they'd done to his own daughter. For 5 years of threats and coerced silence, for forcing a perfectly healthy, intelligent child to pretend she was disabled so that she'd never be a threat to their secrets. Danielle didn't confess. She hired a lawyer and maintained that Emma was genuinely impaired, that any statements Emma made were coached, that I was a confused old man being manipulated by police. Her defense lasted about a week before the evidence buried it. 3 independent psychologists evaluated Emma and confirmed she had no cognitive disability whatsoever. She tested at a 6th grade reading level. Her vocabulary was advanced for her age. One of the psychologists used the word remarkable 4 times in her report. The charges were extensive: identity theft, wire fraud, elder abuse, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery, conspiracy. For Danielle, They added 5 counts of child abuse for the years of psychological coercion and forced isolation of Emma from normal development. Trent faced additional charges based on his prior record. Kevin pleaded guilty and received 8 years. The judge told him that he'd betrayed the most sacred trust a child can place in a parent and the most fundamental bond between a son and his father. Danielle went to trial. She was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 15 years. When the verdict was read, she showed no emotion. She didn't look at Emma. She didn't look at anyone. Trent received 12 years as the scheme's organizer and a repeat offender. The financial recovery took months. The forensic accountant traced most of the money. Some had been spent, gambling mostly, but a significant portion was recovered from accounts Trent had set up. My house was saved. The fraudulent accounts were closed. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Emma came to live with me permanently. The court granted me full custody with no visitation rights for either parent. We settled into a life neither of us had expected, but both of us needed. The first few weeks were an adjustment. Emma was terrified of speaking in front of anyone besides me. She'd spent 5 years being told that her voice was dangerous, that words would destroy her world. Undoing that took time. I found a child psychologist named Dr. Reeves who specialized in psychological abuse cases. She saw Emma 3 times a week at first, then twice, then once. She's been carrying an adult's burden in a child's body, Dr. Reeves told me after one of their early sessions. The fact that she maintained this level of deception for 5 years without breaking tells me 2 things. She's extraordinarily intelligent, and she was extraordinarily afraid. We need to help her understand that speaking is safe now, that her voice won't be used against her. It happened gradually. First, Emma spoke to me freely at home. Then she started talking to Dr. Reeves, then to my neighbor Ruth, a retired teacher who began tutoring Emma to catch her up academically. Then, slowly, to other people. In January, I enrolled her in a small charter school in Northeast Portland that had experience with children from difficult backgrounds. Her teacher, a kind woman named Mrs. Nguyen, called me after the first week. "Mr. Harris," she said, "I've been teaching for 22 years, and I've never met a child like Emma." She read the entire class library in 3 days. She asks questions I'd expect from high schoolers. "Where has this girl been?" "Hiding," I said. "She's been hiding." By spring, Emma had friends, real friends. 2 girls named Sophia and Jade who came over for playdates and marveled at Emma's drawings. Because those drawings, the ones everyone had dismissed as meaningless patterns, turned out to be something extraordinary. Once Emma felt safe enough to draw what she actually saw instead of what she was pretending to see, her talent became undeniable. She drew portraits with an accuracy that startled people. She drew animals, buildings, landscapes with detail and emotion that belonged in a gallery. An art teacher at the school recommended a youth program at the Portland Art Museum. Emma started attending on Saturdays. The instructor told me she was the most naturally gifted student he'd seen in a decade. One evening in May, Emma and I were washing dishes together. She'd taken over drying duty, standing on a step stool to reach the counter. She was telling me about a book she'd read about octopuses, how they could change color and solve puzzles and squeeze through impossible spaces. Then she got quiet. "Grandpa, do you think Mom ever loved me?" I set down the dish I was holding. "I think when you were born, she probably did. But somewhere along the way, she started loving what she wanted more than she loved you. That's not your fault. It was never your fault." She nodded slowly. "I used to pretend I was an octopus. Because octopuses can hide in plain sight. They can be right in front of you, and you don't even know they're there. That's what I did. I hid in plain sight. You don't have to hide anymore." "I know." She smiled. "It still feels weird sometimes. Talking, being heard, like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do. You're supposed to do it. You're supposed to talk and laugh and argue and ask a million questions. That's what 9-year-old girls are supposed to do." "I'm almost 10, she corrected. "Excuse me. That's what almost 10-year-old girls are supposed to do." She laughed. It was the best sound I'd heard in years. Summer came. Emma turned 10 in July. We had a party with Sophia and Jade and a few other friends from school. Cake, balloons, the whole thing. She'd never had a real birthday party before. Danielle had always said it would overstimulate her. Emma told me later that her birthdays at home consisted of Danielle giving her a cupcake and saying happy birthday without making eye contact, then going back to whatever she was doing. 10 kids came to her party. Emma was shy at first, then radiant. She opened presents and said thank you for each one, her voice clear and strong. After the party, when everyone had gone home and we were cleaning up, she hugged me. Not a quick hug. She wrapped her arms around my waist and held on. Thank you for believing me, Grandpa. Thank you for telling me. You saved both of us. I saved myself too. Yes, you did. We're coming up on a year now. Emma is in 4th grade, performing at a 5th grade level in reading and math. She still sees Dr. Reeves, though less often. The nightmares about her mother have faded. She draws constantly, but now she shows people. Her art hangs on the refrigerator, in her room, in the hallway. Mrs. Nguyen framed one of her drawings and put it in the school entrance. Kevin writes from prison, letters addressed to both of us. I read them first. They're full of apologies and promises about how he's changed, how he's taking classes, how he understands now what he did wrong. He asks about Emma. He asks if she's really been able to talk this whole time. Even now, even after everything, part of him still can't believe it. I give Emma the letters sealed. She decides what to do with them. So far, she's put them in a shoebox in her closet. Maybe when I'm older, she says. Maybe when I understand why he did it. Right now, I just want to be a kid. Danielle doesn't write. I don't expect she will. Trent sends nothing either, which is the one decent thing he's ever done. I'm 68 years old. My knees ache when it rains, which in Portland means they ache most of the time. I take blood pressure medication and a daily aspirin. I see my doctor every 3 months. I've updated my will. If something happens to me, Emma goes to my younger sister Patricia in Bend, who's already built a relationship with her through weekend visits, but I plan to be around for a while. I've got a granddaughter who's just starting to bloom, and I'm not going to miss a minute of it. Last week, Emma's school had a talent show. She didn't sing or dance. She stood on that stage with an easel and drew a portrait of a woman from memory. It took her 7 minutes. When she turned the easel around, several parents in the audience gasped. It was a perfect likeness of Margaret. My Margaret, drawn by a granddaughter who'd only known her as a baby but remembered her face, her smile, the way her hair curled at her temples. How did you remember her? I asked, on the drive home, my voice thick. I always remembered, she said. I remember everything. I just couldn't say so. We drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full. Full of things that don't need to be said because they're understood. Tonight, Emma is upstairs doing homework. I can hear her talking to herself while she works through math problems, narrating each step out loud like she's making up for all those years of quiet. Sometimes she sings, usually that same song, You Are My Sunshine. Margaret's song, Tomorrow is Saturday. We're going to the art museum in the morning, then the bookstore, then home for dinner. Normal things, safe things, the kind of things a grandfather and granddaughter are supposed to do together. I think about those 5 years of silence often, about how easily it could have continued, if Kevin hadn't needed someone to watch Emma that weekend, if Danielle hadn't overplayed her hand by fabricating the emergency, if Emma hadn't decided that protecting me was more important than protecting herself. She was 9 years old. She'd spent more than half her life in a prison of enforced silence, surrounded by people who either threatened her or pitied her, and she chose to speak because she overheard her parents planning to take the last good thing she had. Not my money, not my house. Me. Her grandfather, the only person who sat with her and talked to her like she mattered, even when he thought she couldn't understand. I think about all the children sitting in classrooms and doctors' offices and living rooms right now, labeled with conditions they don't have, silenced by threats they can't articulate, carrying secrets that would shatter the adults around them. Emma was fortunate. She found her moment. She found someone who listened. How many never do? If this story teaches anything, it's this. Pay attention to the children who don't speak. Not just the words they're not saying, but the things they're showing you. The drawings, the behaviors, the way they reach for your hand or flinch when a door opens. Because sometimes the quietest child in the room is the one who knows the most. And sometimes the bravest thing they'll ever do is trust someone enough to break their silence. Emma Harris found her voice in my guest room on a rainy Sunday morning in Portland. And when she didn't just save me from losing everything I had. She saved herself from a life of invisible captivity. She proved that the people who dismissed her were wrong, that the mother who silenced her was cruel, and that the voice she'd been hiding for 5 years was the most powerful thing in the room. She's upstairs right now, singing, and I'm down here listening, grateful for every single note.